Little Richard is like my favorite example and like answer when I feel like every generation, like the older generation, will have something like terrible to say about what kids are listening to these days. And like for example, the most recent one was that like "Do the Nene" song or whatever. I'm hella old. I don't remember the song at all. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Talking about
Watch me whip, watch me nene.
Yeah.
And like people are like, dude, like, you know, in my generation, people were like incredible lyricists, and look at this, like, look at the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody and how far music has fallen. Now we're just watch me whip, watch me nene or whatever. And like my answer to that every time is just like wop shop a loo bop wop bang boom. Like people have just been like making up fucking random nonsense to sell music for like since the beginning of fucking music.
Mama
and Little
say,
Richard,
Mama sa, Mama kusa. What does that mean?
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Well, and I mean, the fact that, I mean, I feel like Little Richard, I mean, obviously Michael Jackson's also a great example, but Little Richard's such a great example because the man like invented rock and roll in a lot of ways, you know? But he's also the greatest example of how like a lot of the times in these songs, lyrics are kind of the afterthought, you know?
Yeah, well, and whenever people make those comparisons, it's always like some opus of like 30 years ago and then like the silliest pop song of today. And it's like, well, that's
right.
not a fair comparison, you know?
Right. These guys didn't like go into the recording studio with the same goal in mind and like one of them was better at it.
Yeah.
It's like not how that went.
Say it. Yeah. What was that?
That was me forgetting to turn off my notifications.
The ding-a-ling.
That was the ding-a-ling.
Speaking of my ding-a-ling, another great opus by Chuck Berry.
All right. Well.
And we've opened.
And seen. Yeah.
And
all right.
seen. R.I.P. Little Richard.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You've got Kempa.
And Skylar.
And Shannon.
And Flo.
Yay.
Right. Full house.
Full house. Is that always the
Welcome
order we're
back.
going to do that in?
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
so. We could switch
like-
it up.
We always do the ending part in our specific order.
Yeah, that's true too. Okay. Well, for those of you who are watching, and probably for those of you who are listening, unless I royally fuck this up, I have a new microphone.
Shit. If you fuck this up, this episode is going to be real weird.
This will be, yeah, there will just be bizarre, awkward moments of silence, and then you dive into like different topics without me.
Yeah, it'll just be like silence for long periods of time, and then like the rest of us being like, actually, Dave, all of that was wrong.
Yeah.
Here's the correction.
Which we usually cut that out of every episode anyway.
yeah. We carefully edit that out so we don't look like complete numbskulls.
Every time I'm wrong for about 45% of the episode.
Yeah, these episodes, we record for like 3 hours at a
3
time.
hours. And it's mostly deleting me.
Mostly Dave being wrong.
It's like Fox and Friends on SNL, where at the end there's just this long scrolling thing of like all the errors that happen in the episode.
Yeah, that's voices.
Voices.
So everyone out there back home, thank your editors and your producers.
You got big jobs.
Yeah.
Big jobs.
But yeah, well, welcome back, Shannon. How are you feeling?
I'm all right. This is probably the first day that I've been all right since I was not here on Thursday. My gallbladder done given up on me, and it also did not receive its cancellation notice.
Wow. We thought we were loud and clear on that too.
I thought you were too. And well, my gallbladder just did a big ol' fuck you to voices.
A big whoopsie.
Yeah. It was like, nah, girl.
But while like part of this experience for you this last week, right, was that you got the swab. You got the COVID brain tickle.
That's right.
Yeah, I like woke up and was just thinking that the thing that I really wanted to do on Friday was allow a stranger to touch my brain with a cotton swab.
Hell yeah.
That's been my kink for a long time.
They say do something once a day that scares you.
Yeah. So how did this come about? Was it like, listen, I'm a frontline worker in homeless services. I have to work out in public day to day. Now that these are available, I'm going to go get tested?
Yeah. So I wish I was that well thought out. Honestly, like what I thought was on May 6th, the Bee released the report that anyone in the county who's 18 and older would be allowed to get a test regardless of symptoms. And my thought was, tight. I am in that group of people, and I've been working with folks every day, so I should probably do this. And as the days went on, I think I had to, I don't know, thought about it a little bit more deeply, and then was also like, well, this is also me saying, like, here's a part of my brain science, because it feels like you took it. So it also felt to me like it was the responsible thing to do as someone who's out engaging the public every day. And then Nate, my spouse, for those who don't know him and are listening, because we share a home, he also went with me. Yeah.
Oh, so he got tickled as well?
Oh, he did. And I am a terrible, terrible partner because he went first.
Is tickle the verb we use? Sorry.
I mean, it's not a technical term.
It's not what the doctors say.
The CDC recommends tickle as
tickling
the
your
brain tickle.
I mean, that's almost like saying, like, you go, to the urologist, what's happening is your prostate is being tickled. Like, that's not what we.
That's when.
But that is that's kind of what they do, though, right? I don't know. I guess when I become more middle-aged, I'll find out for myself.
Again, we're not tickling colons with colonoscopy. Like, tickling is generally something that we don't tend to do in public health and medical spaces.
So what is it, like nudging the prostate? What?
It's a massage, right?
It would be examining. I think in this case we would be taking a sample so that it can be tested.
Okay, fair, fine.
Specimen, if you will.
It's like a nice firm rub, I think.
You are welcome to call it a tickle, but just I wasn't sure where the eyes were going when it was like, is that the official term? And I was like, no.
We'll let you professionals use the verbs examine, and we'll extrapolate from there. So you got your brain tickled with your husband. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
I did. It was like a really special date afternoon.
Say more about that.
So we went, did the thing, and then we went to Trader Joe's, went grocery shopping. While Nate was getting his brain tickled, I just nervous laughed the entire time. So I'm a terrible person because I could not stop laughing. And then when it happened to me, I mostly wanted to break the person's wrist.
So he went first.
He did go first. Yeah.
And
what is the thing? Like, how big is the thing that they put in your face? Like it's like a swab, right?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, 6 inches.
And it goes
Maybe
into your
8
nose
inches.
and like way back into your head.
Yeah, so Kempa's reaction is appropriate.
Almost dry heaving
So
over here.
yeah, so what happens? Well, from the start, it's like, so the testing for Sacramento, we get tested at Cal Expo,
Okay.
and it 100% feels like you have been projected into a dystopian movie. Like, it's very, very weird. The intake workers were not wearing any masks. They were also not social distancing, which was like, like, to me, I was like, fuck this. Like,
Distressing, sure.
are they actually taking this seriously? You don't roll down the windows in your car. So you like drive up. You have to like show them your ID and the email that they send you with your reference number through the window.
Okay.
That's
a good start.
Yeah, they of course couldn't find my last name because my last name is hyphenated, and they refused to believe that my last name is Dominguez. So that was a whole thing.
Why?
Really?
Why did they refuse to believe that your last name was Dominguez?
Because the DMV, my last name is too long to fit on the last name line of the California ID. So my first name is like Shannon Nicole Dominguez, and then my last name is Stevens. And they were like, no, it's not Dominguez. Your last name is Stevens. And I was like, no, motherfucker, I know what my last name is. And it's Dominguez Stevens. Like, just look for it that way. Anyway.
Flo, are you a hyphenate?
Flo is
You have your
currently
license
checking
out
her
now.
ID.
Yeah.
But I was like, huh, is that, no, I'm not hyphenated. Griffin is my middle name. And so it is under my first name line, and then my last name line just says Kofer.
Did you get rid of your previous middle name?
I did, as did Tareen.
Yeah,
so
I thought Tareen did that too.
We both have Griffin as our middle name and Kofer as our last name.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a cool way
I
to go.
like that.
I also have like a terrible last name hyphenated situation, and I went the opposite way and just have taken my middle name as my last name.
Oh.
Yeah, so that people
can
it. Actually spell and pronounce my name when they say it.
Yeah.
So did you do that legally, or do you just go by?
No, I haven't done it legally. I've thought about doing it legally.
Yeah.
But my actual last name is my parents put theirs together, and so technically I'm like 25% of everybody in the world with that last name. And my mom said she would be okay with it if I did want to get rid of it, but I don't believe her. So I'm keeping it.
I love it.
Your hyphenate last name reads like you're a Tolkien character.
Yeah,
Yes, it does.
It's outrageous.
It reads like you're from like Lothlorien.
Well, and the first part sounds like a first name. So every time I'm like closing out my tab or whatever, and they're like, all right, cool, what's your last name? And I tell them, they're like, no, just your last name. And I have to be like, no, that is my last name. The first, it's hyphenated. It's under M, you know. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So
now
when I don't use it
now
unless I have to.
everybody wants to know what your actual last name is. Like, we've teased this so hard.
It's gonna have to stay a mystery.
Yeah.
That's Patreon level information.
Yeah, that's
Henri.
behind the paywall content.
It's French.
That's where I'll be like, I'll release that information along with my social security number and my credit card information and whatnot.
Never do that.
I feel like that's not a good idea, but I
Yeah.
also don't want to tell you what to do with your life.
Thank you. I appreciate that you.
I do, and don't do
And
that.
also, our listeners, our patrons have done a lot for us, so I'm not necessarily against this.
Okay.
Yeah, so just so we're clear, Dave wants to give out your social security number beyond
Look,
the paywall.
if
so
somebody-
listen, for $5 a month, you can get Skylar's full name.
Fine,
$25?
$25 a month.
If somebody wants to be a Squillion tier member of the Voices Patreon, they're more than welcome to steal my identity.
Yeah.
No, Dave. Like $25 gets you his credit card and the last four and his zip code code and
Okay,
the
so
code on the back.
you
Like,
don't get to ruin my credit rating at $25 a month. Okay.
Well, we should just release
Brilliant.
different
But
information at higher tiers, right? So for
exactly.
100, you get the little CVC code, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah, I like this.
Yeah.
So anyway, Shannon, they finally found your name.
Shannon, yes, they found your name. We
right,
went
they
down
found
the
my
really
name.
windy path. Sorry.
I completely forgot that we were talking about this. I started thinking about the possibility of having a squillionaire become a patron, and then I went into a fugue state. So yeah, they found my last name, and then so I drove to station 2, where everyone is geared up with like the face shield and the just like full robe. This was like
They have robes.
X-Files level, like, yeah, the robe and the shoe coverings and all the shit.
They had like the plague crow mask on.
Yeah, the
Just
plague
all of it.
doctor.
So just so I'm clear, Shannon. So when you were saying that the people at station 1 were not physically distancing, you meant from each other, not from you, because you were in a car behind a window. So they just were not
Correct.
engaging in distancing from each other.
Right,
Or
and they were
wearing
also not wearing masks around
Gotcha.
each other.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It didn't like make me feel confident that the next 2 stations were going to be awesome. is
Right,
what I'm
Gotcha.
right.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so the
How
second
long
Maybe
was
they
the
were
line?
partners and lived together.
I hope they all live together, and that's
Yeah.
the new
Maybe
story.
maybe
that I'm
those
gonna
2 were
believe.
life partners and they lived together, or like siblings or roommates or something.
Yeah,
All
swab
6
house.
of them. All
Yeah.
6 of them were.
Oh.
Bob House.
Well,
HAUS.
How long was the line, Shannon?
There was, so when I drove up, there was no one ahead of me.
Okay.
But in the time that it took them to figure out that what I was telling them about my own name was right, 3 cars showed up. So in total, we probably spent 20 minutes there.
That's not bad at all.
but 8 of
It's
them were
not
arguing
bad.
about your name.
Correct, right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And my coworkers who went and got tested were like in and out in under 10 minutes. So the process is very streamlined as long as they believe you about your own name. You can get through there real quick. So the second station is where they put the test under your windshield wipers for the folks to take that, for the folks to tickle your brain. And then you go into like I don't even know what the hell to call it. You drive like indoors to where like during the fair they have the pigs and the goats and shit. You drive into that area and get tested, and there that is like very locked down. Everyone is very masked. Like
They're taking it seriously in there.
very seriously. And the staff was really incredible. I mean, we talked to one person, but she was like, I'm not going to tell you this feels good. It's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to make it as quick as possible. You know, and there were lots of opportunities for that's what she said. And I didn't do it. I didn't because I felt like it was a very serious moment. And I was already struggling with nervous laughter. So Nate's experience was different from mine. Like he got his brain tickled and was like, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. And he had like psyched himself out that it was going to be like pretty terrible. And I was the one that was like, yeah, I'm not excited about this, but it can't be that bad, right? And I wanted to dismember the woman that was tickling my brain. Like, so they stick that giant thing up your nose and you think that what you're going to have is like a gag reflex, but it's not a gag reflex at all. Like it doesn't.
Right, because it's like behind your eye, right?
I mean,
isn't that how
like,
it feels?
It felt like it went through my eye and into my frontal lobe. so there's that. It's so stingy. Like, I think the thing, I've had a lot of people ask me what it was like, and what I say is, it's not the worst medical procedure you will ever have done, but it is incredibly uncomfortable for the duration of the procedure, which is probably like 5 to 10 seconds, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not very long at all. They put that swab up there and they do have to like twist it to get the sample, which causes like some really intense stinging. And then it's done, and what happened with me was that my eye just watered. One side of my face just would not, like, my eye was just crying for probably an hour and a half. Like, it just watered a ton.
Yeah.
And I also didn't feel, like, I felt the spot where the swab touched my frontal lobe for a full 24 hours. Like, my nose was like, I was like, it was really agitated. Like, I have really bad allergies. And so Nate was like, maybe it just like triggered something, because it went all up in there, like, because it felt like a really intense like allergy sinus burn. Whereas Nate was done, like, he got swabbed and then was fine. I kept asking him throughout the day, like, you really don't feel anything? And he was like, no, I'm good.
Well, he's also like a 6'3" man, so maybe they didn't go as far into his cavity as they do to other humans.
You think maybe they were intimidated by Nate's size and gave him like the easy tickle?
They're just like, listen, the swab doesn't go as far as it needs to into this very large man. So
I would not say that he's a very large man.
He's large height-wise.
Yeah, he wasn't standing.
I'm sorry, Trine just walked in and told me that he's using the rain to wash the car.
Yeah.
Oh, Tareen,
I'm doing the same
that's
thing.
the way I do it too.
Yeah,
Why?
I'm doing that right now.
Why are you?
I am
why?
also I'm washing my car right now too.
He actually has rags.
Yeah, I mean, I do too.
So he's actually
he's
doing
going
something.
out to do it.
Yes.
Oh, he's
like,
going.
yes.
Oh, 100%. I was like, oh,
That's
yeah, I'm doing
different.
that too right now.
Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. So
I appreciate that interruption so much. Yeah, anyway, so I would say, like, well, one, I know people are struggling to get appointments now, because since that news broke that everyone could get tested if you're over 18, folks just like went to Project Baseline and got those appointments real quick.
Well, that's why I asked about like how long the line was, because it doesn't seem like it was that crazy at the time.
Well, because you have to make an appointment. So you don't just
Right.
show up and
Okay.
wait. Like, you
Right.
show up at a certain time and it's like a few days out, right?
Okay.
Well, so I was given the option to test the very next day at like 8 a.m, but because of work, I was trying to choose a time that would not interfere with my work schedule.
Right.
So I waited until like 3 days after the 6th is when I tried to, the 6th is when I made the appointment, and my appointment was on the 8th. So 2 days later. But yeah, I mean, my coworkers were able to get tests the very next day. And I think, like, so part of the screening is they ask you where you work, or if your job falls into one of 3 categories, which is like a healthcare facility worker, a first responder, and I don't remember what the last one is. And I think so one of my coworkers accidentally clicked on one of the things that she doesn't do, and it gave her a test in a category, in a time slot that none of the rest of us were given.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, it's possible that if you work in like a healthcare system, or if you're like a paramedic, they have like special slots.
Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
fast
of
track
course.
you.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was, I mean, the staff, everyone there, like, with the exception of the intake folks, like, they irked me for lots of different reasons. But once I got past that first checkpoint, the process was just so, it was very streamlined, and everyone seemed to like understand that those of us in our cars were living with a certain amount of fear,
Right.
or anxiety
Right.
being there. And I have not received my results yet. So
I was gonna say, when do you expect them?
Yeah, so they told us anywhere from, I'm actually checking my email now. They told us anywhere from to expect 2 to 4 days, but as long as a week. And if you are positive, you will get a phone call from a medical professional, and if you're negative, you'll just get an email.
Okay.
So that is one of, like, my coworker who got tested the day before me already got her email saying that she was negative.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, great. Well, I'm just going to wait for my phone to ring because I didn't get my
Nice.
email yet. You know, like, so, I mean, I'm not like actually there, but
it was the coworker that was on the streamlined one, you said, right?
no, this is a different coworker.
Different one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say, like, and I don't know, I mean, I know you talked about it last episode, that there is a certain amount of like responsibility with, you know, this test is available, so help science, go do it. And it would be better, obviously, if we had antibody testing, but if we can, if folks have the option and want to get tested, like, I would say don't allow the fear or anxiety of the experience to keep you from it, because it, even though like I had a situation where like I felt uncomfortable, it was only ever feeling uncomfortable, like the stinging pain, like, yeah, it was like stinging pain for a couple seconds, but my discomfort is worth knowing for
Right.
sure.
For sure.
And yeah, and then like go get yourself a fucking Dairy Queen ice cream afterwards or something.
Curbside pickup or delivery only, please.
Right.
Yes, please.
I have a question for you, Shannon. Actually, I think I have two. So my first one is, when you were being tested, did they say, like, what did they say to you? How are they describing what the test can and can't do? I'm really curious. I'm always curious about, like, what messages are being conveyed to the public when they're going in.
Yeah, so actually there was no discussion about what the test was actually, like what the test function was.
Okay.
All of the discussion was around what I could expect to experience while the sample was being collected.
Okay.
But Nate actually, before the test was started on either of us, asked the nurse whether or not this test included antibody testing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she went on to explain that it didn't, and that this test would just let us know if we were carrying the virus. And she, like, I kind of like at that point blacked out for a minute, but she talked a little bit about like the difference between an antibody test and the test that we were getting. I was just so focused on like trying to not psych myself out that I stopped listening.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, it's hard to retain all the information you're given, which is why I was really just even curious if anything was said. I think a lot of folks are getting tested but are not being informed as to what that test might mean, and I think it's just important to raise that issue, because obviously we, you know, are now spending money on contact tracing, and it's really helpful to get people to start to think about who they've been in contact with during windows, and if they're not, you know, telling folks what windows to just be mindful of, that can make things a little more challenging, especially if you start to, like, it's 4 days later when you might be getting your results, and you might start to experience symptoms by then, right? And so you're not in the same space to be able to, like, kind of have a clear mind and say, okay, I went to the grocery store on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, or, you know, those kinds of things. So
yeah,
I'm a little disappointed to hear that it had to be requested, right? It was because Nate was curious about what was and was not included that information was even shared.
Yeah, there was not, I mean, and I think that had he not asked the question, it would have really stopped with just like, this is going to be like mildly to moderately uncomfortable, but it will be fast. Like, yeah. And while it was happening, I can't say that Nate or I felt that there was like a deficit of information offered to us, but now that you're saying it, it makes a lot of sense that like we aren't medical professionals, so we aren't even necessarily equipped to ask those questions. And now that you're mentioning things like contact tracing, like I'm even going back in my head now thinking, well, since Friday, how many people have I had contact with? It would be really great if they would tell us when we're being tested, like keep a log of who you come in contact with between now and, whenever you receive your results.
Right. And also based on the time window that they're testing for. So this test is gonna, screen positive if you had, if you have had the disease in whatever time frame, right? Or and so that you're kind of also thinking back already in terms of like 2 days before the test, right? In addition to the 4 days after the test or whatever their window is. So yeah.
Well, shit.
There's a saying in public health that, if someone doesn't remember it happens, it didn't happen. And that's always what we go by. So sometimes professionals will say, no, we counseled people on this and whatever else. And I'm like, well, counseling only counts if the person who was counseled remembers it, right?
Right.
And so in this case, it's like, the information is only as useful as it's shared. And
sure.
Yeah.
Will be interesting. I mean, obviously, like you guys are almost certainly both going to test negative, but I'm like, we'll be awaiting that text and the thread when you get that email.
Yeah, I feel like tomorrow is gonna be the day where I like, if I don't get the email, then it's gonna switch to like anxiety about getting the phone call because because obviously they are taking those samples and testing them on the weekend. Otherwise, my coworker wouldn't have received her results. So,
right.
By Tuesday, that's a number of days.
Well, if you go by the numbers in our county, I would say you're probably okay. And that's not saying you're 100% out of the woods, but if you go to covid19.ca.gov, California has been really good at keeping track of where the new cases are, where they're sort of popping up by county to county. And Sacramento County, I don't think, has had over 10 cases confirmed on a given day since, like, I want to say May 3rd, at least a week ago. So yesterday there were, and again, that's a weekend, but there were 2 confirmed cases reported in our county. So the numbers say that again, Sacramento County is leaning in the right direction. There's no reason here to rest on our laurels. There's no reason to stop doing what we're doing. But
it is a reason to rest on our laurels, right? Like, go home and sit on your fucking laurels and stay there.
Yeah, just like sit right on that laurels. And don't get off it.
Right. Shannon, did I read correctly that this is being done with the Department of Public Health and they're actually trying to do some surveillance with this? Is that what it says on the website?
Shit, I don't know about that.
Okay.
I
clearly have not been tested, but I'm curious about what the process kind of looks like. And I'm right now not getting tested in part because I really would like antibody test because I was really sick in January and the beginning of February in a way that I have not been sick in the past. And I kept remarking, like, I got my flu shot and this year's flu shot was pretty accurate. And I'm really surprised that I'm sick in this way. And so and given that the only person I've had, contact with has been Tareen for forever, and we have not, had really any close contact with anyone else for now weeks, I'm fairly confident that I'm not going to test positive. But I'm really curious to know, was that thing I had before just a really gnarly cold, which it certainly could have been, or was that, one of the earlier cases of COVID? So I am curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have spent any amount of time actually reading the shit that I said that I read,
that was not a gotcha question, Shannon.
No, I mean,
Flo just bust Shannon out on the show.
Look who's not doing her homework.
Not at all.
There's a lot like in this email that they send us. So you have to, the process to get an appointment is like very quick. It's super easy. You do have to have an active email address and a valid driver's license. And then you offer them some you give them some very basic demographic information. Yeah, the driver's license thing is very frustrating to me.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you don't have a car, how do you even partake in this?
Yeah, so walk-up testing is actually a thing that the Sac County is going to start. I want to say at the end of this week, maybe. I can't remember, but walk-up testing is going to be made available to folks. But the ID situation, I suspect, will not have changed. So,
and no other form of ID will work. Like it's only like a license or state ID or something.
A state ID is the option that it was. Yeah.
Right. So how can the community you're serving, potentially many of them might not have that sort of ID.
The other thing is that we have at Loaves, we have people who dedicate a service year to us, and so they have out of state IDs, and one person was telling me that she couldn't get through because she has an out of state ID, and the person, you have to be Sac County resident, and it's well, I have been a Sac County resident, not for an entire year, but by the end of my year of service, it will have been a year, and I currently reside here at an address in Sacramento. So it's not perfect. There are flaws that do not consider poor people, people experiencing homelessness, people who can't read or write, or out of state transplants, these, so if you are someone who can read, has an ID, has an email address, and is computer literate, you can sign up to get this test pretty easy.
And call in, or no, you have to go through the online system.
You have to go through online. And so the situation came up with us because Nate and I scheduled our appointment same day, same time. And Nate was under the impression that we could just go together in the same car. And on the in the email that you receive, it says no extra people in the car, just it should just be the person who has the appointment. So I was trying to get a hold of someone to see if two people who share the same house and have the same appointment time could go in the same car. And I just couldn't find any way to get a hold of someone. So I ended up asking a coworker who was getting tested before us to ask them for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, there,
there are kinks to be worked out.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like they've got a pretty good thing going on overall, with like Dave said, some kinks to get ironed out,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's good. I mean, it feels good. I feel better knowing that people in my county who are worried about it can go get tested.
Totally.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
if you meet A, B, and C requirements, and the county should be addressing that, definitely.
Yeah, granted.
Well, Shannon, I will wait with bated breath to hear how it turns out for you and Nate, but I am cautiously optimistic.
I mean, same.
Yeah. Why don't we jump ahead unless there's anything else we want to add there? Really, I mean, just for the listeners, if you want to get tested, hop on that site and sign up for it. And if you think you might be symptomatic or if you think you've been exposed, I think those are the reasons to do it, right? Flo. Did we lose your audio?
Flo, we lost your audio. You're muted.
Yeah.
Oh, muted again.
Sorry. Now I muted Dave too.
Oh,
wait.
I was like, I don't know how I ended up muted. What I was trying to say is that, yes, if you think you've been exposed or you have some way of being exposed. So if you bought groceries 2 weeks ago and have been in the house all this time, you probably are not high. You live alone. You probably risk of needing to be tested immediately, but you're certainly welcome to, because part of what they're trying to do is identify people who may be asymptomatic. And so if you have been out somewhere and there's a possibility that you may have been exposed, it's really helpful, even if you're not feeling symptoms, to go and get tested. And obviously, if you are feeling symptoms, we definitely want you to go and get tested and make sure that you get adequate health care. But yeah, I mean, there's, that's why I kind of framed my whole, like, I'm not going to get tested right now kind of thing in the way that I did, because I am cognizant of the fact that there are adequate testing facilities, but I also don't really feel like I've been exposed given how far I've been away from people. So I'm really just more interested in knowing if I actually ever was infected, because, one of the things emerging right now is the notion that you may be healthy and you may have contracted it, but there still could be long-term impact of having had the virus. And so, I would want to certainly monitor that. I'm not fearful about that, because I'm generally thinking I probably am okay, but I would like to at least be aware, if I'm at risk for that there are things I need to take, just some precautions about as my life forward. So, yeah, I think obviously it's always a personal decision, but wanting to make sure as many people as would like to and are able to be tested.
Yeah, and it's just that much better that option is now out there for the general public.
Absolutely.
And as we mentioned, confirmed cases are going down in the region, which is something to kind of look forward to, kind of think that we're doing the right thing. That doesn't mean to ease up on what we're doing, right?
Right.
Cool. Shannon, thank you so much for sharing about
seriously.
Having your brain swabbed. And
sorry about your brain.
Tickled.
It was tickled. My brain was tickled.
Brain was tickled. And thank you just so much for your candor and sharing, so much of your personal experience with us through all of that. I think that's really rich and valuable for all of us who are not having that same experience, to benefit from your vantage point, and also highlighting some of the issues that have come about with you being, on the front lines.
Yeah, I don't think we, I guess, talk about that as much as maybe we should. Like the amount of work you put in and the way you do it, it's like it affects you not just like on sort of trauma by proxy, and it affects you physically too. And I don't think people understand that or realize that about social workers. And it's been really, really, to me, instructive to hear your experiences on that front. So thanks.
Yeah, you got it. I didn't know that shit affected me physically either until it started to. 15 years in.
Vicarious trauma.
Yeah, super happy to share. Honestly, I think I would like to have people, I would have loved to have more people tell me what their experience was like getting tested. I had one person, and that was helpful-ish. So yeah, it's not as terrible as you think. Just go do it if you think you've been exposed.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a few minutes, so I thought it would be kind of fun to share something that I got in the mail the other day.
Oh, so you did get
Say
one
more.
of these.
Say more.
I did.
Say more, David.
It's
Was
from a
it-
brand new media outlet, not associated with Voices River City, called the Epoch Times.
I
And here
can't
it is
even.
for those.
I had never heard of this.
I had never heard of this before either.
Same.
Yeah.
You shared the link. Like, never heard of this at all.
The headline is How the Chinese Communist Party Endangered the World. So it's effectively kind of a broadsheet, I would say 8-page. I'm not flipping through it right now, but
it is 8 pages.
quote unquote newspaper. Is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I only know that because of the reading that we did to prep
Yeah.
for the show.
Well, it's interesting. So that's the same tactic that we had when I worked on the Occupied Wall Street Journal. We were an 8-page broadsheet. But it's effectively an argument from the Epoch Times trying to somewhat racistly tack the Chinese government with the blame for the coronavirus outbreak throughout the world.
Which is already like the right wingers are already on top of this anyway, right? Like, isn't it? What didn't one of the states make it legal for like anybody in the state to like sue China for the coronavirus or something?
I know that
I
the
did
state
not
of
know about that.
Missouri did sue China.
I love that idea, dude. I love the
goes.
idea of like China being like, all right, well, come get your money, fuckface. Like,
Missouri, yeah.
All right, Missouri.
But so this paper, quote unquote paper, I'm interested that like the three of you haven't ever heard of the Epoch Times because I've been targeted with it. So I have gotten YouTube ads from them.
yeah,
I learned about these YouTube ads in the article.
yeah,
Right,
same.
I had never heard about this. Now, granted, I spend a lot of time, focusing on things that are probably only Black famous and that nobody else knows about. So there's an element of my life that for that where that is true. But I had never heard the story, like nothing.
So I'm interested.
How long have they been around?
Well, they've been around
It's 20 years.
They've been around for a long time. So it was started by a religious sect. So
Yes.
Here it all goes back to the Falun Gong movement, FALUN space GONG movement. It's a religious sect, possibly a cult. I don't know.
It's based on also this. I feel like this is relevant given the headline of the one that you got in the mail. It's a Chinese spiritual practice, right?
Right. So it's from China, and they were declared illegal and a cult by the Chinese government in 1999. So they've had it out for the Chinese government. The Chinese government has had it out for them. And that should speak to you, pretty well why these headlines are what they are. Basically, they're trying to wedge into the overt racism that Trump is sowing out into our country and wedge in their ideals there, right? They think that they have an in. And I've seen other religious orgs do this. You've seen other sort of like QAnon related shit do this stuff too during all of this, because all of this, right, coronavirus, it's a time where we're all scared, we're all searching for answers, and we want somebody to tell us that we're not crazy, and we want somebody to tell us what's going on, right? And that's times like that leave it open for a lot of weird fucking conspiracy type folks to create to gain a following. So Epoch Times has had a long history of trying to pull the anti-vax movement into what they're doing, the QAnon movement. The QAnon folks are the ones that thought that there was a pedophile ring under a pizzeria in DC
Is that their claim to fame? Is that the thing they like galvanized around?
That's one of the major QAnon things, yes. And I love that Shannon and Flo just looked at me that way, because like I thought everyone knew this about QAnon. They are
well, and then but then like with the Epstein stuff, that turned out to only be partially wrong.
Well, that's the problem with these conspiracy folks, right? They take a kernel of truth, a sliver of truth, and then they build out from it, right? And they're like, well, everything you've learned was wrong. Everything you thought you knew was wrong. So they'll
I'm
say,
gonna admit, I don't know what QAnon is. How do you? Is
QAnon was
Q,
like
the letter Q and then anon, like anonymous.
Like anonymous.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm learning so many things.
It's all these conspiracy theory white folks that exist on either subreddits or 4chan.
Well, Q was somebody
these are like what we call hoteps in the Black community. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
So
White hoteps.
Okay. Yes. All right. That makes sense. All right.
Maybe. Fuck, man. I don't know.
Q was an actual person though, or was at least like an internet personality who claimed to have all of this inside information about like democratically run pedophile rings and shit like that. So for a minute it was like, yeah, this guy, but he was leaking it on 4chan. Yeah.
But it could have been any number of people claiming.
Right. Well, yes, exactly.
Person, right? Because it's 4chan. It's all anonymous, right? And again, that's where the anon comes from. It's all fucking nonsense.
Yeah. All right.
The original concept is what Skylar is presenting. That like they were in DC and they knew about this pedo ring, and like it all ended up focusing in on this pizza shop in the middle of DC. That's just a random pizza shop, and it resulted in this like white idiot walking in with like a fucking gun and saying like, I'm going to save all of the kids that are being enslaved underneath this pizza shop, which of course they don't exist.
That didn't exist. Yeah.
No, they were on an island that you could only access through Jeffrey Epstein's plane.
But again, that has nothing to do with QAnon, right? Like,
I mean,
go on, Skylar. Let's hear it.
Well, no, I think it's hilarious and like kind of a sign of the times, right? That there's like, because at first you hear like, oh, Hillary Clinton's involved in this like pedophilia ring that's operating under this pizza place, and you're like, that is completely, absolutely ridiculous. Like, who could even ever believe such a ridiculous thing? Well, and then we get this fucking like the Epstein shit comes out, and no, like there is an island, like allegedly that had underage kids that were being prostituted, that like a lot of the world's most powerful people were visiting with Jeffrey Epstein, including the current president and a few presidents from before, as well as other world figures from around the world.
So again, we have to be real careful about the slope, right?
It's alleged, right? Like I get that.
We do have facts, and then we have inferences, and then we have things that take us way, way, way too far. And if we follow it down all the way down, suddenly we're reading the Epoch Times and we're like, oh my God, I'm going to subscribe to this shit. Right.
I just think my point is that at first the QAnon stuff seems like it's like 100% ridiculous. And then you're like, oh wait, it's only 75% ridiculous because some of this outlandish shit is fucking real.
Sky, you're taking the far right stuff and the leftist sort of conversations on Jeffrey Epstein, which like those are based in some fact, but also they conjecture a lot.
Sure, I'm happy to use
all of this, and it's like again, this is a news podcast, guys. Like we shouldn't dance around this stuff. Like unless we have like some real solid facts. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein is a child molester. Yes, he was convicted by that in that space. But unless we have some like real solid facts there, I really don't want us to entertain that too much.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Flo
I'm
and
certainly am
Shannon,
not
where,
trying to
where
push
are
any...
you two on this?
I can't. I mean, I feel like Flo and I are maybe in the same place of just like, tuh? Like
I'm still trying to figure out what group we're talking about and what they care about who they are. I can't even get into who did what with a plane on an island. Like I was just like,
Okay.
Oh yeah, that my mind was at that point I had blacked out.
The baseline here is that there's a far right QAnon space that like will get like a kernel like that they'll just dive into, just claiming that like, you know, all, you know, politicians are pedophiles. And then the far left will like, you know, start following the Jeffrey Epstein thread. Jeffrey Epstein was the guy who quote unquote killed himself in prison. He was obviously
while under suicide watch.
Yeah, he is a convicted child molester.
I know.
Also, he's connected with Trump. He's connected with Bill Clinton. He's connected with all of these big names that like are on the flight logs of his planes that took him and them to this island. That's what Skylar's talking about. All of that is true, but like I don't really want to entertain that conjecture too far. But like tying that in with the QAnon stuff, I think we got to be a little careful there.
Okay, so just real quick, I certainly am not trying to tie it in. I'm just trying to say that those two stories are not as different. Like they don't sound as different based on those facts. Like, I don't know. It's just like, I guess more that it's just funny to me that like that there was like a thing that was even sort of somewhat similar happening given the completely ridiculous nature of the QAnon.
Here is what I heard. There are a bunch of people who like to entertain conspiracies. And part of the reason that they're good at that is because like large chunks of the truth and then do some exposition on them in some way that's not rooted in truth. And that sometimes, even though they may have different goals, they end up picking similar parts of the truth and sometimes even beginning to go in similar directions with it. And so there appears to be some sort of overlap. Is that what I've heard?
That is true.
I got it.
Now, the QAnon folks, they're leftists, they're pretty bright. They still are pulling together some loose associations, and we need to be careful with that.
That's not the QAnon folks.
The QAnon podcast, right? So the leftists that run the QAnon podcast, that's like the guy that went and fought in where did he fight? You don't know what I'm talking about?
There's a leftist QAnon podcast?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh my God, we're learning so much.
I feel like I need like a visual so I can be like, okay, leftist QAnon, not the same as QAnon. And then who's on the right? And then...
So Brace Belden is one of the people on the podcast. What's the podcast called?
I can't remember, but I've heard of him.
TrueAnon, that's what they call it, right? So they're like the true QAnon, right? And that's where the leftists sort of dive into this same stuff, right?
I'm still figuring out what QAnon is, and now there's a derivative of QAnon.
So QAnon is far right, and it's like it's hard to find any facts involved here. TrueAnon is taking that little kernel of sliver of truth from them and like on a leftist podcast saying, here's some other evidence where like we think this goes into this direction. All of this, we got to be careful with this information, right, guys? But
it is funny that like this whole conversation started with us like discussing a newspaper that is like famous for disseminating false information.
Right. And that's the problem, and that's the fear. And like you have to be careful with this shit, man. And so the Epoch Times, right? They dive into QAnon stuff. They dive into anti-vax theories. They're also like wildly pro-Trump. So we're living in this time now where, again, our newspapers are crumbling. Our president tells us not to believe the CDC or the WHO as far as coronavirus issues go. He also, of course, is very anti-media, mainstream media, most media, except for the stuff that just blindly says what he says. Now, the Epoch Times actually blindly says what he says. They also, weirdly, will put like $1 million into Facebook ads and then YouTube ads.
There's a ton of money here.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, in the article that we read from CBC News, it says that they spent more money on Trump advertisements than any group but the Trump administration.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. Where do they get that money from? Because the other thing that it says is that they're unsure of the funding source for this publication. It's likely donations, but also they can afford to employ reporters who speak English and Chinese, which I guess what they're trying to say is that if you're bilingual, you cost more money.
Well, I think especially if you can speak Chinese fluently, I think that's true. You can make a pretty decent living that way.
Also, you don't have to pay a reporter much at all to employ them these days. But according to the Epoch Times, they work under 23 languages and in 35 countries. So this is a movement of theirs that's related to their religious movement, but also politically affiliated, and they have endorsed and supported far-right candidates throughout the West, throughout Western Europe, and throughout the US. And they're focusing on Trump right now. And I really think it might be interesting to kind of see the direction that goes. This could be a proxy for the Trump campaign.
Well, and he and other people in that administration have like retweeted and otherwise published this on their own social media and whatnot. Which obviously legitimizes it for a lot of people, right? If the president is retweeting it,
and we have other officials that are validating this and saying this is like their favorite, their jam. Like
that was in that New York Times article, it's Representative Paul Gosar, a Republican from Arizona, called it his favorite paper.
Yeah,
of course it's a Republican from fucking Arizona.
It fucking rules, dude.
Arizona, man.
Jesus.
They never cease to surprise me.
They're the worst.
It is like there's like some weird and and a lot of this is pretty nebulous and it like does kind of get into conspiracy theory territory or whatever. But there's like an aspect of like the right wing thing that is like completely bananas to me. That's like seems like some like skull and bone shit that goes back like way far, and it like it's mostly hilarious to me because it's so fucking weird and out there and people are so into it, but it's also like I don't know, man. I don't know, it's weird. I guess I don't know. It's fucking bananas.
Yeah. Well, the Epoch Times, their move in print here, it feels like a pretty obvious move to get boomers really riled up.
Great.
And again, as a communist, I don't really particularly like the Chinese government. I also don't like how communists are portrayed here. I also don't think the Chinese government handled any of this coronavirus very well. That's not to say, though, that the U.S., the capitalist United States, which is probably the worst form of capitalism, handled the coronavirus worse than literally every other nation on Earth.
Is currently handling the coronavirus worse than every other nation.
We're looking at 135,000 deaths in our country by the end of the summer?
Yeah, and that's this wave of
2
it,
months.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens. Let's hope for the best.
So anyway, very happy to get the Epoch Times in my mailbox today. Their videos, their ads on YouTube always have
it was snail mailed to you?
Yeah. It was in my mailbox.
And the report says that they're sending these 8-pagers to like targeted neighborhoods in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what that looks
there was
like
a great
in terms of
Canada
Sacramento,
article
but,
on this.
Right.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's like, I don't know. I don't know if like Sacramento neighborhoods are being targeted, but there's like obviously some intentionality behind who has received these copies in other countries.
I am interested. Why me?
Yeah. I mean, I'm good. I'm gonna pay more attention to my mail. I tend to just like, you know when something's junk mail.
Yeah,
I don't even
yeah.
really have to look at it too much, but
I have
no
another
more.
I have another friend who got in the mail today a little cartoon book from a hardcore like some Christian sect, just being like, "What after coronavirus?" And it's like, you should turn to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a
that's
very
the way.
interesting. Yeah. But like, I think during these times, right, people are questioning shit. And like, you're going to see a lot of shit like this coming out and being like, everything you thought you knew was a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that what sucks. I mean, there's a lot that sucks about that, but one of the things that I think is that like when we're experiencing collective grief and oftentimes what comes with that it are these like crises of our belief systems.
Sure.
And so you have these motherfuckers who are sending shit out to people and emotionally manipulating them during a time of crisis, and it's irresponsible, it's fucked up, it's like emotional abuse. Stop sending bullshit to people.
Yeah.
I mean, you see
I mean,
that
it's not
too
gonna happen, but
at these like reopen California rallies. I mean, like we've said on previous episodes before,
Yeah.
like the fucking like the 3%ers and the Proud Boys are out there doing the exact same thing.
yeah,
It's like,
Right.
all right, here's a bunch of freaked out white people. Like this is a fucking an extremely fertile recruiting ground right now.
it is a fertile recruiting ground. Yeah.
Do you remember that YouTube video called Zeitgeist? That was like, it basically tried to prove that like 9/11 was a hoax.
I remember
I've
Loose
heard
Change.
that 9/11 is a hoax, but I don't think I'm aware of this YouTube
Well,
channel
this
or
YouTube video was a major perpetrator of this. And the way it started, I don't care much about most of the video, but the way it started was the way that I learned that just most cults bring people in. It's like everything you thought you knew, like look at
Right.
your religion. Your
Right.
religion is just like this religion and that religion and that religion. And like everything you thought you knew is wrong. And now we're going to tell you the truth, right? And like that's how
Yeah.
this shit always works.
Right. Well, because it makes that person then the only dispensary that you have of like what the fuck is actually going on,
Right.
and it puts them in an incredibly powerful position over you and subjugates you.
Right.
Totally.
Don't trust anybody else. Trust me. By the way, the conspiracy theorists that I mentioned in a previous episode that I was engaging with on their like, well, let's wait till the truth comes out about the virus. They blocked me. So,
Well,
Yes, high score, Dave.
yeah.
Thanks for the update.
Mhm.
Well, Dave, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to bring it home to a little bit more of a personal note.
yikes.
You know, I should probably save this for a paywall episode, but it's important and I want everybody to be able to hear it. So I'm just going to come right out with it and tear the Band-Aid off. I'm not working right now.
Yeah.
The COVID thing has my employment situation all fucked up. I mean, but the silver lining is that I've had all this time to read and listen to all this wonderful Voices content. But I mean, it's been like a couple months now and I'm starting to run out of this great content. And so my question to you, Dave, where on the internet can I go to find more of this content that I crave and need?
Absolutely. First, let me preface this with, it sounds like you're in a vulnerable space and that you've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, and
Very
I just want to
vulnerable.
start with, you're looking around, you're seeing that there's, you've been failed by a lot of people.
No, I'll tell you who's failed. Capitalism has failed me and everybody else who lives in this goddamn country.
Yeah,
And I'm seeing it for the first time.
and I'm gonna tell you that,
Dave. I'm not gonna make it.
You're absolutely right, and everything that you've been told is a lie, Skylar.
This is making a lot of sense. This is making a lot of sense.
God.
And
I feel like the curtain has been pulled back and I'm seeing the truth for the first time right now. And it's
And
blowing
now
my fucking
our
mind.
episode needs a parental advisory. Just like that.
Truly, really, and truly, we have gone off the deep end.
there's a long journey ahead for all of us, but the first step you can take going to patreon.com/voicesrivercity and putting down
Nobody asked.
$5 a month. And
I love it. This is the best pitch so far.
and Skylar and everyone else listening, the truth will set you free.
Oh my word, yes.
So glad this is the end of the show because I'm not.
All
gonna
right, dude. The red flags are going up at the ATF right now.
I will not recover from this. Oh my god.
Taurine is currently on the floor laughing, just busting a gut at this one.
He came in earlier today and said, Skylar, man, really responding to the crowd feedback. He's doing a great job with these transitions. I'm not even taken out of the story anymore. I'm just listening along. And I'm like, there it is. And I was like, oh my gosh, Taurine,
Yeah.
you're way too into disclosing.
Hell yeah. I love it.
No, so
You got at least
Right.
one fan.
I love it. I'll take it.
yeah. I mean, most of you listening know where our shit's at right now. We'll just leave it at that.
Right? None of this is at all surprising.
It's got David Kempresh over here.
Oh dang, Waco.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Sacra Waco.
Wake Ramino.
Wake Memento.
I'm actually family friends with one of the ATF agents who got in trouble during that. That's
Wow.
for another
Gosh,
episode.
what
Yeah. let's get
Patreon
that-
level?
Yeah, let's get
Ooh,
that guy
that
on
sounds
for
like
an
a good
interview.
story.
We'll put that one behind the paywall.
I
But
will
so, just so
love
I'm
that.
clear, though, if I want to find out about the real truth and have all the bullshit wiped away, I want to go to voicesrivercity.com, right?
That's our hub, yes,
Okay.
for all of our information. And we'll tell you all about Dianetics from there.
Hell yeah. Let's start up Vianon.
Vietnam.
For real, let's call this episode.
Pit bulls howling and more at voicesrivercity.com.
This went off the rails even for us.
It was hard to
I
bring
love
it
it.
back. It was
I love
hard
it.
to
I
bring
told you.
back, for
As soon
sure.
as Dave started, I was like, I'm not this is the end because I'm not gonna recover.
I made sure not to look at the screen as I was going.
Yeah, as Flo and I were dying.
Oh my gosh.
So you folks should definitely go seek out the truth at voicesrivercity.com. And additionally, if you want to support the truth, you should probably go to our Patreon. And
It makes it sound so bad.
Patreon.com/voicesrivercity
Is that how
to
I
that's
sound?
right.
to subscribe
Skylar
to the
has
truth.
He's already found some of the truth there.
Yeah.
I actually subscribe to the truth at $25 a month along with our
Shannon and
co-host
Flo are already
Flo.
level 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are.
These guys
about
have all my credit card info and they use it all the time.
all the fuck. How do you think we get all of our cute things? It's with that Patreon level Skylar's credit card info.
Oh my god.
I just turned my bank notifications off because it was too stressful.
Yeah.
But the other thing you could do is follow all of us on Twitter for some like real deep diving truth.
I am at Kempo, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I'm guillotine for you. That's guillotine, the number 4 YOU.
I am Shan N.D. Stevens.
And I am Flojaune, OJAUNE.
We're all going to add the truth to the end of our handles after this episode.
All right, although real quick,
It sounds like you're feeling vulnerable. Oh my God.
I'm gonna make a motion that Dean and the rest of Be Brave Bold Robot is not allowed at the compound under any circumstances. They will not. When the rapture happens, they're gonna stay here. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they've got their own sort of Porch Fest cult going, and they're gonna have. Yeah, they're gonna be our big
all right
enemy once everything goes
Oh,
on.
dude, yeah, we can beef with other cults.
Yeah,
this is gonna rule.
Oh my gosh,
I can't
love
wait
a cult
until
beef.
until this COVID thing is done and we can really get down to brass tacks with this shit.
Flo is really rethinking joining voices.
Put up the little church finger and tiptoe out now. Right back.
I'll go get the White Claw. I'll be back. And then she never returns.
Never.
Whatever.
Well, you know what? This show was
episode.
This show was great.
really,
I feel
really
like
did some good work here.
we're just
feel
like
good.
wilding out.
Feel good. Can put a pin in this one. Feel good about it.
I feel really good about it, and I also love to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, but here's the question: when you think about it, how does it make you feel?
Oh,
That is the question.
Yeah. and for only $25 a month, you can find out the answer.
Why are you?
You can love to think about it too. At $25 a
you
month.
will love to think about it. You will dedicate your whole life to thinking about
How
it.
are we still recording right now?
I don't know. Let's be done. Can we be done?
10-minute close.
this is great. Thank you all
All
for
right.
if you made it this far, you are the real one.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
are the real ones.
Sorry, everyone. We'll see you on Friday.
Yes. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
We're not sorry.